Well, I didn't really want to make the guitar my career. The guitar kind of became my career. So I first had a guitar in my hands when I was 7 years old, because my only brother had Down syndrome. And my mother had the idea that we as a family could sing songs to the accompaniment of a guitar. And so my father, I still remember the day my father came back from some lousy music store with two of the worst instruments ever constructed on the planet Earth. A very bad guitar and an even worse banjo, and he got them both for, you know, $100. Well, that was 1960 something, you know, so that was more than it is now, but it still wasn't very much money, and they were not very good instruments. So my father had played a few chords on banjo when he was in college, so I started with the banjo, but it had steel strings, and the action on the instrument was horrible. The strings were very high, so it was just about impossible to play that instrument. So after about a month with the banjo, I picked up the guitar, and I was still noodling around with the guitar 2 or 3 months later. And for some reason, it kind of stuck with me. And then my parents were members of a Quaker meeting, and I was raised as to the extent I was raised in any religion, I was raised as a Quaker. And so a member of our Quaker meeting at the time was a member of the Philadelphia Orchestra. He was the first double bass player in the Philadelphia Orchestra, a man named Roger Scott. And Roger asked around the musical community to find the name of a classical guitar teacher, because he said, if you're going to study guitar, you know, you should really study classical guitar, because that way, from that you can go and you can do any other kind of guitar, which is totally untrue. You can't. It's quite specific, and it doesn't at all mean that you can play jazz or folk guitar or blues guitar or any kind of guitar, in fact. So, but anyway, that was his idea. So he found the name of a man who had participated a little bit in Segovia's classes in Siena, Italy, in the summers. And so I started with that. Really, I don't even think he was a professional guitarist. He taught a little bit of guitar on the side, and he had another profession. So I was with him for a few years, and then my family went to Sweden for a year, because my father had a sabbatical over there as a college professor. And during that year in Sweden, I was going to a Swedish school, but I didn't yet speak Swedish. And so I was by myself a lot, and I started to practice the guitar almost out of boredom. But in that year, I got very interested in it. So I came back from Sweden, and I was about just going into 7th grade, so I was 11 or 12 or something. And I was trying out a guitar in a guitar store, and someone who was working in that guitar store, well, you know, you really got to get this boy too. And he gave the name of the best teacher in Philadelphia at the time, William Viola. Well, William Viola was, again, not a professional guitarist. He taught guitar at this store on the weekends, and he was an engineer at IBM during the week, because there was no other way to make a living. So anyway, I started to study with Viola, who was not, as I said, not a professional guitarist, but very intelligent, very disciplined, and very ordered in his approach. So basically, he had studied the Segovia style via Segovia's LP recordings and Segovia's editions. So he basically took me through the whole Segovia school. And in about 2 years, I had pretty much gobbled that music up. And then we moved to Syracuse. So then I was without a teacher at all, really, except I had some summer master classes with Gilia, and then one with Diaz. But as far as guitar teaching, like how to do something on the instrument, again, Gilia was and remains a great musician. He's not really one. He doesn't get involved with the minutiae of guitar fingerings and all of that. He's a musician. He talks about music. He solfeggios the lines and all this kind of thing as you're playing for him. So again, I had to teach myself a great deal of guitar technique. And then I got to Yale. Again, I went to Yale. I didn't go to a conservatory. So again, I didn't have a guitar teacher. And I was just, teaching myself, really, to put myself through the Bach lute suites, and I started to make transcriptions. I started, especially Froberger, Johann Jakob Froberger's music just totally captivated me. And I was totally in love with that. And I started to then transcribe Scarlatti, and of course I had already been transcribing Bach. And then one thing just kind of led to another, and I had you know, I graduated from Yale, and I didn't have any idea of, you know, really how to start a career or anything. And fortunately, sort of a fairy godmother, Rose Augustine of the Augustine String Company, agreed to sponsor a debut in New York for me, which happened in November of '76. So that was kind of my, I mean, I had been playing in public since I was 13, but that was really my sort of official, big coming out professional debut. And at the time, to play in Alice Tully Hall was a very big deal for, you know, for a young soloist. And I got an excellent review in the New York Times, which attracted the attention of some managers and agents. And then I started very slowly to build my career, but always in fits and starts. And I never have paid much attention to the marketing side of my career. I haven't been a good businessman with it. I've just been too involved with the music to really do a good job managing my career. So my career has just kind of, to the extent that it is one, it has sort of happened, you know, more than that I've been a big motor pushing it, because I'm just not that interested really in career per se. I'm interested in performing, because when I have to perform, I have to practice in a different way, and I learn things on stage that I wouldn't otherwise learn. Ideas come to me on stage that wouldn't occur to me in any other way. So that's really you know, how it happened in my case. But I think these days the young people have a very different road. I mean, they have to do everything themselves. They have to almost be their own photographer, their own press agent, their own recording engineer. I mean, they have to do so much more themselves, and so much of these days, so much of the career is just posting online, posting this video and posting that video, and being on all over Facebook and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very different world. I mean, I kind of feel like a dinosaur in a way when I remember how it was to start a career when I was starting out, and how it is now. It's such a different thing. So I think for myself, the only thing that has remained constant has been the fascination with music and the love of music, and the aspiration to be a good musician, you know, and be an honest artist, and to do justice to the works that I'm performing, because I'm a very willful performer, you know, and willful performance are compelling in one way, but they have to watch out not to let their own personality intrude too much on that of the composer. On the other hand, this sort of, you know, reverential genuflection in front of, you know, the great artists of the past is also, doesn't really get you close to their music. And that's why, you know, working directly with a great composer such as Bob Beaser is such an instructive thing, because you know, his ear is so wonderfully developed, and his sense of rhythm is so perfect, that he hears things that normal mortals don't hear. And so working with Beaser gives you sort of an analogy for what it might be like, you know, if you were going to be working with some of the great composers of the past that I've tried to interpret, you know, and still try to interpret. And you realize, you know, there is some commonality amongst composers, you know, as far as, you know, they do write what they want, you know. The notation does mean something, but it's a matter of having, you know, having enough ear, having enough sensitivity to capture that and to understand that.